Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk webinar series. Today we're going to be showcasing how to take advantage of the advanced networking features of the NG Firewall solution. My name is Shannon Miles. I'm part of the product marketing team here at Untangle, and I'll be your host today. I also have with us our Director of QA, John Coffin, who will be doing the presentation and demonstration and going through some very specific details about the networking features that NG Firewall can do, as well as answering any questions. First off, we're going to try something new. We're going to do a poll to just kind of help us figure out what type of audience we're talking to. So if you guys would please take the time to answer this quick question of just what type of Untangle user you are. Are you not a user? Are you new to Untangle? Have you been using Untangle for a little while? Or are you super advanced? We just want to know. While that is going on, just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please just use the audio panel on the right-hand side to select your preference. If you do choose to dial in, you need to use the phone and access code provided. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you will have the option to rewatch and revisit areas that you need to follow up on. And as always, we'll be answering questions throughout the presentation, so please just submit them in the Q&A box, and we have people on by to help answer those questions, and John will also be answering them at the end of the presentation. And as always, if you have any questions or we don't get to your question, you can ping us at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. And let's see, we got a good amount of answers, so I'm going to close this poll and share the results with you guys. So it looks like we have a good amount of Untangle users. This is awesome. We love to hear that everyone kind of knows who Untangle is and what we do. So just one more poll. Oops. Let's see. So I have one more poll, and this will just quick question if you guys would bear with me. Just where are you using or going to use Untangle? Whether this be in your business, your client's business, a school, a home, or somewhere else. We're just very curious on where Untangle is being used. And with that, I'll continue my brief intro. Just wanted to mention this is a highly technical webinar, so if you're not familiar with Untangle or networking concepts, we suggest you attend one of our 101 webinar series. That's a more high-level topic. You can also view this recorded webinar and any past recordings webinar on our website. All right, so I think we got a good amount of answers, so I'm just going to close that and share. Looks like most people are in my business, so it's great to hear. Thanks again for providing us with these answers, and we appreciate you.
Hi, Paul.
Oh.
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, someone is chatting. Sorry. Sorry about that. All right. So with that, I will pass it over to John, who will go through our webinar and demonstration.
Thanks, Shannon. So this is kind of advanced networking. It kind of assumes that you have your Untangle already set up on your network. We had a previous webinar a couple weeks ago that you may want to review if you're looking to install your Untangle for the first time. This kind of assumes that you have at least the Untangle installed and you're passing traffic through it. One of the biggest questions that we get as far as networking is how do I do port forwarding? For those who are not familiar with port forwarding, when your Untangle is filtering the internet and it's natting the traffic, it's going to prevent someone from the outside making the initial session into a box that's inside your network. It's a way of basically being the gatekeeper. Port forwarding can be kind of complex. There's some simple rules to follow. We have different ways of getting that done, and we can kind of demonstrate on how to do that. So in this diagram we have on the slide here, we show someone on the internet trying to access different ports to reach your different servers on the inside. And a lot of times port 80 is your web server, port 21 is an FTP server, and then port 25 is generally you have a mail server inside to receive mail. And again, by default, all ports are blocked coming in on almost any kind of device you have, including Untangle. So here we'll show, I'll show you on the Untangle itself on how to do port forwarding. So we just go to configuration and networking. And you can see this particular Untangle has two WAN ports, this one and this one. And then we have an internal network right here. So what we're going to do is, if we look at what devices we have on our network, I have a server that's set up on here at .28. So if I go back to my networking, and let's say I want to port forward 80 because this is a web server. So I'll go to my port forward rules, and I highly recommend using the add simple rules. Unless you're doing something complex with port forwarding, like you're limiting what IP addresses can access it, or you have some complex rules that you want to do, definitely start with the add simple rule. And that amounts to, I'm going to do web server. By default, it starts on port 80. So I select port 80 in this case, and I'm going to put it in my new destination. So my server is here. And then I click done and apply. And we're completely done. So anyone that goes to any of the interfaces on here, either this address or this address, on port 80 will be redirected to my web server. It's kind of no fuss, we're done, everything works, and that's what. Now, if you wanted to do that a more complicated rule, you can switch over to advanced, and you can see the advanced rule. This is the type of template it uses, and in general you want to use this. Destination local just means that someone is trying to access one of your WAN ports. Protocol, generally TCP, unless you're running some kind of movie server, and then you'll select UDP. And then destination port. Port 80, web servers, again, port 25 is mail servers, and then port 21 for FTP. You don't have to put this new port in there. I could just leave it like this. So when this is blank, it will automatically assume that we're using the exact same port for the inside. Now, let's say I want to add some security to this. I could put this on a random port instead. So I could put port 21080, for example, and then I can send that to my port 80 on my web server, which is the common web services. In this case, someone would have to specifically know what port address to come in on to view my web server. It's not widely used just because if someone's using port scanning, they can kind of figure out what's going on and then get to your web server. If you want a little bit more security, what I recommend, for example, if this is just a web service that's used in the company and you have a couple of satellite offices and you know their IPs, you can make it where only those IPs can go. So you do source address, and you could say, you know, my satellite company is at this IP address, and I have another satellite office at this location. Sorry, incorrect there. And so I put two IP addresses that can access this port on my Untangle. And that provides quite a bit of security for you. So only those specific IPs can come in. let's see. I generally recommend using the simple add because it creates a very simple rule. The more rules you add to a port forward, the more complex it is and the more chance of it breaking or not working all the time. So less is more in port forwarding. I've had port forwards that literally all I've done is I haven't even put protocol, and I just put local destination and destination port, and then I just put the LAN location, and that was it. It works perfectly, and you'll be able to get it done, and there's very little chance of this kind of breaking. It's very easy to troubleshoot also. Some of the things that happen though is, for example, let's say you have a web server and you're doing this port forwarding. If someone on the inside of your network puts that IP address or domain name, they're actually going to loop out to your external address and then loop back in. It's called a hairpin turn. And to kind of avoid that, what I usually do is go over to my DNS server, and I will put in a local address. So let's say I am going to just do a new address, which is my web server.com, and that would normally go to my outside IP address. That's what the outside DNS will show. But for my local users, I'm going to have them go directly to my web server, so they're not even going to have to hit the firewall. It's kind of a common way to kind of prevent. It does work with a hairpin. A lot of routers don't handle that case. We do. This will kind of reduce the load on your Untangle and make it easier for your internal people to access the website. Let's go. Okay, so you have your web server set up. Let's see if I can answer any quick questions on that part of it. Let's see, is it possible to do port forwarding to different servers with the same port? You can only do port forwarding to different servers if you have multiple IP addresses. In that case, you'll do a little bit of port forwarding, for example, on this one. Let's say I have a specific address. So if my WAN, I'll put in, I'll take out destination local, put destination address, and I'll actually put in one of my WAN addresses that I have. And then that will direct that one. And then for a second web server on port 80, you'll add the second WAN address. And those addresses need to be added. Let's get that. They need to be added to your WAN address under aliases if you're going to do multiple ones. Obviously, you can't do the same address, the same port, and to different web servers. That's a whole different story there. Let's see now. One other part that's common on web servers is that you want to not only do you want people coming in on a specific address, but you also want the web server to be going out to the internet on a specific IP address. And that's called one-to-one NAT. So in those cases, what you'll do is add an alias, for example. So I'll add an alias address, 201. And we'll apply that real quick. And then we'll configure, there's two parts to one-to-one NAT. The first part is a port forward rule. So we'll do add, and then we're going to do destination address. We need to remove the local, and we're going to put that same IP address here. And we'll just go ahead and put that in. That's the first part. The second part is we want NAT rules. And that's really simple. Just we want to tell it that this particular local server will always go out a specific IP address. on the WAN. So we'll just create a rule, server NAT. We're going to tell it where it's going to be coming from. Sorry, we're going to tell the address that we want to use. So it's that same address we put in the port forward rule. And we're going to do a custom rule. And that NAT is going to come from our internal web server, which is at this address. And then we play done and then apply. And this will save my port forward rule and my NAT rule. And now we've just done a one-to-one NAT. So anytime that web server goes out to the internet to extract anything, common uses are that if you have a web server that's doing API calls to another web server and they have to whitelist your IP address, that way that server excuse me, always uses the same address. See if I can get any quick rules. Let's see here. Let's see if there's any. One-to-one NAT. A WAN balancer rule is a little. It does work that way. The WAN balancer rule, when you say a particular item will always go out one WAN. But in this case, we may have multiple addresses on one WAN. So you could have that WAN balancer rule go out a particular WAN, but you can't have it go out a specific IP address. And that's the difference between one-to-one NAT. All right, so unfortunately, some of these topics will take a little bit of rule. That's kind of the reasons for it. It's really common for web servers to have that one-to-one NAT, just so you can have that constant connection on a specific address. Not only that, you can use that for firewalls, that when it's incoming on a certain IP address, that certain actions happen because it's a web server. You can also do things like create separate racks based on the IP address that's coming in. Moving forward a little bit, VoIP areas, VoIP phones are a kind of a complex area to handle. Generally, what's done on hosted VoIP systems is you're trying to connect the phones to an external on the internet provider that's making the phone connection for you. Those are pretty much, you want to bypass the Untangle, and there's a couple of easy ways to do that. You just go over here and you'll add a rule for your phones. So for example, I'll say my phones, I'll say a range, so the source address is going to be, all my phones, for example, will be on the 10.200 through 250, for example. And I want to bypass that. That means anything in that IP address range will bypass the Untangle, will not be filtered. So we click done on that. And the problem is a lot of times it's very hard to configure static IP address on phones because you're working with a phone dial system. So what I usually do is I go over my DHCP server, and for example, I'll find a phone. Let's just pretend this is one of the phones right here, and I'll go ahead and make that a static IP, and then I'll go ahead and change that into the range that's going to be bypassed. And I'll click apply. So when that phone reboots, it's going to have a specific address that's going to bypass the Untangle, avoid any kind of complications with the VoIP UDP kind of connections that need to be consistently stable and very little lag. Let's see if we can look at some of these questions that people have. Let's see here. It says we have 3 separate ISP connections with balancing turned equally, but the vast majority of the networks, that's a WAN balancer. Can you port forward to a server across IPsec? With IPsec, you really don't need to port forward. The IPsec will come in and have already a connection to it. So all you have to do is put the local IP address on the remote area if you have a VPN connection. Why the built-in bypass SIP? We kind of put that rule in there because a lot of people are not forgetting, so we're hoping that if you're using a SIP phone, it will automatically bypass. I recommend actually adding an IP address type bypass because sometimes it takes a minute for that, recognizing that it's a SNP. So we do have that in there for VoIP. I do recommend going ahead and adding the IP addresses directly. Let's see a couple of other questions. I don't see why you can't use VoIP under bridged. It's really not an issue. I do recommend still putting the bypass rule. Let's see what else. Kind of a longer topic here is VLANs. The VLANs are really tagged packets that go across the same wire that can be redirected based on their labeling on there. Common uses for this is if you have a connection in your building and you currently have excuse me, an Ethernet line going through this building, but it's very difficult to put a second one. But you have traffic that's on the other side of the building that you want to keep separate from each other. The common way to do this is to basically put two sets of traffic over the same wire, but differentiate the traffic by putting tags on them, which are called VLAN tags. Untangle supports this fairly easy, and really the VLANs to the Untangle are just another interface. So for example, on my internal, I want to add a new VLAN because I have a remote part of the building that I don't want to pay to have another Ethernet line sent all the way over there. So what I'm going to do is create a VLAN tag. So what I'll do is add a VLAN tag. I'm going to call this, remote office, which is just on the other side of the building. And the parent is going to be the internal. I'm going to give it a VLAN tag of 3. And this is just going to be addressed. So I'm going to give it a new IP range. And then I can enable DHCP on there or whatever I need to. So when I click done, I just save that. So now I will have really another interface, but it's connected to the same physical wire. So on my either on my switch or on my PC, what I'll do is add the same VLAN tag, which is 3, to it. So the only traffic that it will see is that traffic that's tagged 3. This makes it so the remote areas of the computer, I can separate those into 2 networks, or I can add another VLAN tag and just continuously separate the different parts of the network that I have only one wire to reach over there. And none of the traffic across the wire will see each other because of the VLAN tags. All right, excuse me. Go over a couple questions here. Try and find ones. Can you? You should be able to VLAN tag across IPsec. I actually haven't tried that, but it's just another interface. You would have to structure the rules kind of carefully on the IPsec to use the VLAN IP range for the local IP address, same way on the other side. Let's see here. You know, a VLAN, it's still traffic on there, so it's, you know, it's still going to require, you know, the same amount of bandwidth on that particular wire. So there, it isn't like you're doubling the performance of that wire. Let's see here. Some other questions. Yeah, the DNS server acts like the host file on Windows, except it works for the entire LAN. It's kind of nice because you don't have to go to every machine and add entries into their host file. You can just do it directly on the DNS server. And that DNS server is, you can direct where it's going to be seen. By default, any non-WAN will have access to the DNS server, but you can actually limit that per interface. Can you set up inner VLAN routing rules? It's actually just another interface for Untangle. So you can actually go into routing rules and direct those interfaces on there. For example, you know, you can just say, for example, right here, I can go my remote office VLAN. I can make that the next hop depending on what IP addresses I want to put in there. No, we don't want to save that. Let's see, any plans to allow address? Let's see, any other? Are the ports available on Untangle function as a layer 3 ports as they can be used for layer 2? Let's see, with some other questions here. Let's see. Let's see if we covered everything. So much for VLAN. So VRRP, I did cover this under our first networking webinar. I thought I'd cover it one more time. We actually have a really good setup guide that was done by our, let me switch over here. Sorry, I haven't. By our architect of our Untangle. It's quite well done. It covers pretty much all the scenarios that you're looking for, where you just want to have 2 untangles and you want to have them as a failover attempt. And then also if you just want to have complete redundancy of external and internal. Some of the key things is the VRID and then the weight. I can show you an example on this. So on one Untangle, what I'm going to do, let's do internal. It's a little easier to understand. We'll go down here to redundancy on VRRP. We'll enable that. We do have a little indicator which Untangle is the master and the slave. We'll give it an ID. Now that ID needs to match with the companion that it has on there. And we have to give it a priority. So I'll give this one 100 priority. And then I will go to the other Untangle. And we'll look at this interface over here. And it's in the same IP range. So I can turn my redundancy on. We want 1. This is going to be 50. and we'll say done and apply, and we'll do done and apply here. So I've just made 2 untangles. Fill over. Of course, I'm using one of these is I don't know why that's not working for me. Let's see here. IT. It's a little bit of troubleshooting we have to do here. We'll see how that goes. Let's try that again. Oh, it's probably this alias I put in here. Well, it's not cooperating today. I probably changed something in the network, and that's causing the problem. Let's see. Let's answer some questions here. See, can you touch on the port forward? See what else we got here. Let's get this cleared out. So forward filter rules. Somebody asked about that. Really, this amounts to that you want to prevent any kind of traffic globally, whether bypassed or not bypassed. You want to stop. For example, let's say you have a particular machine that you never want to have access to the internet. A case in point that I use them for is to prevent my security cameras from going out to the internet. So I'll go ahead and just create a rule for them. I just gave it a name here. And I'm going to say source address is going to be the source address of my security cameras, and then I want to block them from getting out. So I click done and apply, and now my security cameras cannot go out. And globally, whether it's bypass, non-bypass, it will just prevent it actually going out on there. Let's see, what other questions could we have here? Do you need a license for VRRP? And that is no. That actually comes with the Untangle itself. It's part of the free package. Let's see. Webinar on QoS. We actually had a previous one on QoS. If that will help. All our webinars, of course, are archived. Can you set up firewall rules between VLANs? Of course. You can just select the interfaces and decide which ones will talk to each other. OpenVPN with VRRP. I've actually got this to work, and the way it's a little more complex. You actually have to modify the OpenVPN config file that you send out to your clients so they only have a domain name. And then that domain name will go to one IP address. And then that way, whatever box is master and has that IP address, it will connect through there and go out. When the boxes do switch, it does disconnect the OpenVPN. Does the filter rule work immediately or after reboot? The rule works immediately. Really, there should be no reason to reboot the Untangle box. All kinds of network settings and so forth, there's no need to reboot the Untangle. When you have a range of cameras, do you enter it manually? No, you can actually add a whole range of IP addresses here. So, for example, if I had, 10 cameras, I could just enter them in like this and then click done. Let's see, yeah, if you're having problems with VRRP, I would suggest that you open a ticket with support. I really recommend that. VRRP does not sync configurations. One method that I use to keep my VRR machines in sync is I use the system backup. I actually do a manual backup to a file, and then I do a restore, but we restore keeping current network settings, because you don't, when you restore on the second machine, you don't want to overwrite the network settings, and that keeps them pretty much in sync. Usually I don't do them very often because I don't make a lot of changes to my configurations. How do I do time-based blocking on websites? You need a policy manager for that, and you can actually do time management.
Okay. Hey, John, I'm going to kind of cut you off a little bit, so we're running out of time. So I know, if you go to the next slide, I know this was a lot of information. It's a very technical webinar, and we appreciate all the questions. And so if you need any assistance with what John mentioned today, especially specializing configuration settings, or you need just help installing and configuring your Untangle network, we do offer professional services. We do have support, but if you need very specific help, we do recommend that you work with our professional services team. You can find more information on our website. So all of these questions, I think, have brought to light that we need to have some more tech talks on these specific topics. So next year, we do have another tech talk next month, but it's on one of our applications, bandwidth control. John, if you could go to the next slide. That's next month, but next year we will be, we'll go through these questions and find some of the specific issues that you guys are having, and have more tech talks that will just cover one or two of these issues instead of trying to cover it all, since I know it was a lot of information all at once. This webinar was recorded, so it will be posted on our YouTube channel. Tomorrow I'll send out emails with the link, and we will be posting the questions and answers on our wiki and forums. If we didn't get to your question, please email support or sales, and also just hit us up on the forums. Our guys are there to help answer questions and get you guys set up properly. So again, thanks John for the demonstration, and thank you everyone for attending. Hope everyone enjoyed it, and have a great day everyone.